Chapter 42. The Princess of Heng Wu dispels, with sweet words, some insane suspicions. The inmate of Hsiao Hsiang puts, with excellent repartee, the final touch to the jokes made about Goody Lu. We will now resume our story by adding that, on the return of the young ladies into the garden, they had their meal. This over, they parted company, and nothing more need be said about them. We will notice, however, that old Goody Lu took Pan along with her, and came first and paid a visit to Lady Feng. "We must certainly start for home tomorrow, as soon as it is daylight," she said. "I've stayed here, it's true, only 2 or 3 days, but in these few days I have reaped experience in everything that I had not seen from old till now. It would be difficult to find anyone as compassionate of the poor and considerate to the old as your venerable dame, your Madame Wang, your young ladies, and the girls too attached to the various rooms, have all shown themselves in their treatment of me. When I get home now, I shall have no other means of showing how grateful I am to you than by purchasing a lot of huge joss sticks and saying daily prayers to Buddha on your behalf. And if he spares you all to enjoy a long life of 100 years, my wishes will be accomplished." "Don't be so exultant," Lady Feng smilingly replied. "It's all on account of you that our old ancestor has fallen ill by exposing herself to draughts, and that she suffers from disturbed sleep. Also that our Tachier has caught a chill and is laid up at home with fever." Goody Liu at these words speedily heaved a sigh. "Her venerable ladyship," she said, "is a person advanced in years and not accustomed to any intense fatigue. She has never before been in such high spirits as yesterday," Lady Feng observed. "As you were here, so anxious was she to let you see everything that she trudged over the greater part of the garden. And Tachier was given a piece of cake by Madame Wang when I came to hunt you up, and she ate it, who knows in what windy place, and began at once to get feverish." "Tachier," Goody Lu remarked, "hasn't, I fancy, often put her foot into the garden. And young people like her mustn't really go into strange places, for she's not like our children, who are able to use their legs. In what graveyards don't they ramble about? A puff of wind may on the one hand have struck her, it's not at all unlikely. Or being on the other so chaste in body, and her eyes also so pure, she may, it is to be feared, have come across some spirit or other. I can't help thinking therefore that you should consult some book of exorcisms on her behalf. For mine she may have run up against some evil influence." This remark suggested the idea to Lady Feng. There and then she called Ping to fetch the jade box record. When brought, she desired Tsai Ming to look over it for her. Tsai Ming turned over the pages for a time, and then read, "Those who fall ill on the 25th day of the 8th moon have come across, in a due westerly quarter, of some flower spirit. They feel heavy, with no inclination for drink or food. Take 7 sheets of white paper money, and, advancing 40 steps due west, burn them and exorcise the spirit. Recovery will follow at once." "There's really no mistake about that," Lady Feng smiled. "Are there not flower spirits in the garden? But what I dread is that our old lady mayn't have come across one too." Saying this, she bade a servant purchase 2 lots of paper money. On their arrival, she sent for 2 proper persons, the one to exorcise the spirits for Dowager Lady Chia, and the other to expel them from Tachier. And these observances over, Tachier did in effect drop quietly to sleep. "It's verily people advanced in years like you," Lady Feng smilingly exclaimed, "who've gone through many experiences. This Tachier of mine has often been inclined to ail, and it has quite puzzled me to make out how and why it was." "This isn't anything out of the way," Goody Lu said. "Affluent and honorable people bring up their offspring to be delicate, so naturally they are not able to endure the least hardship. Moreover, that young child of yours is so excessively cuddled that she can't stand it. Were you, therefore, my lady, to pamper her less from henceforth, she steadily improve." "There's plenty of reason in that too," Lady Feng observed. "But it strikes me that she hasn't as yet got a name, so do give her one in order that she may borrow your long life. In the next place, you are country people, and are, after all, I don't expect you'll get angry when I mention it, somewhat in poor circumstances. Were a person then as poor as you are to suggest a name for her, you may, I trust, have the effect of counteracting this influence for her. When old Goody Liu heard this proposal, she immediately gave herself up to reflection. I've no idea of the date of her birth. She smiled after a time. She really was born on no propitious date, Lady Feng replied. By a remarkable coincidence, she came into the world on the 7th day of the 7th moon. This is certainly splendid. Old Goody Lin laughed with alacrity. You had better name her at once Xiao Cheer, 7th moon and ingenuity. This is what's generally called combating poison by poison and attacking fire by fire. If therefore your ladyship fixes upon this name of mine, she will for a surety attain a long life of 100 years. And when she by and by grows up to be a big girl, every one of you will be able to have a home and get a patrimony. Or if, at any time, there occur anything inauspicious and she has to face adversity, why it will inevitably change into prosperity. And if she comes across any evil fortune, it will turn into good fortune. And this will all arise from this one word, ingenuity. Lady Feng was, needless to say, delighted by what she heard, and she lost no time in expressing her gratitude. If she be preserved, she exclaimed, to accomplish your good wishes, it will be such a good thing. Saying this, she called Ping Er. As you and I are bound to be busy tomorrow, she said, and won't, I fear, be able to spare any leisure moments, you'd better, if you have nothing to do now, get ready the presents for old Goody Liu, so as to enable her to conveniently start at early dawn tomorrow. How could I presume to be the cause of such reckless waste? Goody Liu interposed. I've already disturbed your peace and quiet for several days, and were I to also take your things away, I'd feel still less at ease in my heart. There's nothing much. Lady Feng protested. They consist simply of a few ordinary things. But, whether good or bad, do take them along, so that the people in the same street as yourselves and your next-door neighbors may have some little excitement, and that it may look as if you had been on a visit to the city. But while she endeavored to induce the old dame to accept the presents, she noticed Ping Er approach. Goody Liu, she remarked, come over here and see. Old Goody Liu precipitately followed Ping Er into the room on the offside. Here she saw the stovetouch half full with piles of things. Ping Er took these up one by one and let her have a look at them. This, she explained, is a roll of that green gauze you asked for yesterday. Besides this, Our Lady Feng gives you a piece of thick bluish-white gauze to use as lining. These are 2 pieces of pongee which will do for wadded coats and jupes as well. In this bundle are 2 pieces of silk for you to make clothes with, for the end of the year. This is a box containing various homemade cakes. Among them are some you've already tasted and some you haven't. So take them along and put them in plates and invite your friends. They'll be ever so much better than any that you could buy. These 2 bags are those in which the melons and fruit were packed up yesterday. This one has been filled with 2 bushels of fine rice, grown in the imperial fields, the like of which for congee, it would not be easy to get. This one contains fruits from our garden and all kinds of dry fruits. In this packet you'll find 8 taels of silver. These various things are presents for you from our mistress Secunda. Each of these packets contains 50 taels, so that there are in all 100 taels. They're the gift of Madame Wang. She bids you accept them so as to either carry on any trade, for which no big capital is required, or to purchase several acres of land, in order that you mayn't henceforward have any more to beg favors of relatives, or to depend upon friends. Continuing, she added smilingly, in a low tone of voice, these 2 jackets, 2 jupes, 4 headbands, and a bundle of velvet and thread, are what I give you, worthy dame, as my share. These clothes are, it is true, the worse for use, yet I haven't worn them very much. But if you disdain them, I won't be so presuming as to say anything. After mention of each article by Ping Er, Goody Liu muttered the name of Buddha, so already she had repeated Buddha's name several thousands of times. But when she saw the heap of presents which Ping Er too bestowed on her, and the little ostentation with which she did it, she promptly smiled. Miss, she said, what are you saying? Could I ever disdain such nice gifts as these? Had I even the money, I couldn't buy them anywhere. The only thing is that I feel overpowered with shame. If I keep them, it won't be nice. And if I don't accept them, I shall be showing myself ungrateful for your kind attention. Don't utter all this irrelevant talk. Ping Er laughed. You and I are friends. So compose your mind and take the things I gave you just now. Besides, I have on my part something to ask of you. When the close of the year comes, select a few of your cabbages, dipped in lime, and dried in the sun, as well as some lentils, flat beans, tomatoes and pumpkin strips, and various sorts of dry vegetables, and bring them over. We're all, both high or low, fond of such things. These will be quite enough. We don't want anything else, so don't go to any useless trouble. Goody Liu gave utterance to profuse expressions of gratitude and signified her readiness to comply with her wishes. Just you go to sleep, Ping urged, and I'll get the things ready for you and put them in here. As soon as the day breaks tomorrow, I'll send the servant lads to hire a cart and pack them in. Don't you therefore worry yourself in the least on that score. Goody Liu felt more and more ineffably grateful. So crossing over, she again said, with warm protestations of thankfulness, goodbye to Lady Feng. After which, she repaired to Dowager Lady Chia's quarters on this side, where she slept with one sleep during the whole night. Early the next day, as soon as she had combed her hair and performed her ablutions, she asked to go and pay her adieus to Lady Chia. But as old Lady Chia was unwell, the various members of the family came to see how she was getting on. On their reappearance outside, they transmitted orders that the doctor should be sent for. In a little time, a matron reported that the doctor had arrived, and an old nurse invited Dowager Lady Chia to ensconce herself under the curtain. I'm an old woman, Lady Chia remonstrated. Am I not aged enough to be a mother to that fellow? And am I, pray, to still stand on any ceremonies with him? There's no need to drop the curtain. I'll see him as I am, and have done. Hearing her objections, the matrons fetched a small table, and laying a small pillow on it, they directed a servant to ask the doctor in. Presently, they perceived the trio Chia Chen, Chia Lin and Chia Yong, bringing Dr. Wang. Dr. Wang did not presume to use the raised road, but confining himself to the side steps, he kept pace with Chia Chen until they reached the platform. Two matrons, who had been standing, one on either side from an early hour, raised the portiere. A couple of old women servants then took the lead and showed the way in. But Baoyu too appeared on the scene to meet them. They found old Lady Chia seated bolt upright on the couch, dressed in a blue crepe jacket, lined with sheepskin, every curl of which resembled a pearl. On the right and left stood 4 young maids, whose hair had not as yet been allowed to grow, with fly brushes, finger bowls, and other such articles in their hands. 5 or 6 old nurses were also drawn up on both sides like wings. At the back of the jade-green gauze mosquito house were faintly visible several persons in red and green habiliments, with gems on their heads and gold trinkets in their coiffures. Dr. Wang could not muster the courage to raise his head. With speedy step, he advanced and paid his obeisance. Dowager Lady Chia noticed that he wore the official dress of the 6th grade, and she accordingly concluded that he must be an imperial physician. How are you, noble doctor? She inquired, forcing a smile. What is the worthy surname of this noble doctor? She then asked Chia Chen. Chia Chen and his companions made prompt reply. His surname is Wang, they said. There was once a certain Wang Chunqiao who filled the chair of president of the College of Imperial Physicians. Dowager Lady smilingly proceeded. He excelled in feeling the pulse. Dr. Wang bent his body, and with alacrity he lowered his head and returned her smile. That was, he explained, my grand-uncle. Is it really so? Laughingly pursued Dowager Lady Chia, upon catching this reply. We can then call ourselves old friends. So speaking, she quietly put out her hand and rested it on the small pillow. A nurse laid hold of a small stool and placed it before the small table. Slightly to the side of it, Dr. Wang bent one knee and took a seat on the stool. Drooping his head, he felt the pulse of the one hand for a long while. Next, he examined that of the other. After which, hastily making a curtsy, he bent his head and started on his way out of the apartment. Excuse me for the trouble I've put you to. Dowager Lady Chia smiled. Chen escort him outside, and do see that he has a cup of tea. Chia Chen, Chia Lin, and the rest of their companions immediately acquiesced by uttering several yeses, and once more they led Dr. Wang into the outer study. Your worthy senior, Dr. Wang explained, has nothing else the matter with her than a slight chill, which she must have inadvertently contracted. She needn't, after all, take any medicines. All she need do is to diet herself and keep warm a little. And she get all right. But I'll now write a prescription in here. Should her venerable ladyship care to take any of the medicine, then prepare a dose according to the prescription and let her have it. But should she be loath to have any, well, never mind. It won't be of any consequence. Saying this, he wrote the prescription as he sipped his tea. But when about to take his leave, he saw a nurse bring Ta-Chi-er into the room. "Mr. Wang," she said, "do also have a look at our Chi-er." Upon hearing her appeal, Dr. Wang immediately rose to his feet. While she was clasped in her nurse's arms, he rested Ta-Chi-er's hand on his left hand and felt her pulse with his right, and rubbing her forehead, he asked her to put out her tongue and let him see it. "Were I to express my views about Chi-er, you would again abuse me. If she's, however, kept quiet and allowed to go hungry for a couple of meals, she get over this. There's no necessity for her to take any decocted medicines. I'll just send her some pills which you'll have to dissolve in a preparation of ginger and give them to her before she goes to sleep. When she has had these, there will be nothing more the matter with her." At the conclusion of these recommendations, he bade them goodbye and took his departure. Chia Chun and his companions then took the prescription and came and explained to old lady Chia the nature of her indisposition, and, depositing on the table the paper given to them by the doctor, they quitted her presence. But nothing more need be said about them. Madame Wang and Li Wan, Lady Feng, Pao Shai and the other young ladies noticed, meanwhile, that the doctor had gone, and they eventually egressed from the back of the mosquito house. After a short stay, Madame Wang returned to her quarters. Goody Lu repaired, when she perceived everything quiet again, into the upper rooms and made her adieus to Dowager Lady Chia. "When you've got any leisure, do pay us another visit," old Lady Chia urged, and bidding Yuan Yang come to her. "Do be careful," she added, "and see Dame Lu safely on her way out. For not being well, I can't escort you myself." Goody Lu expressed her thanks, and saying goodbye a second time, she betook herself, along with Yuan Yang, into the servants' quarters. Here Yuan Yang pointed at a bundle on the stove couch. "These are," she said, "several articles of clothing, belonging to our old mistress. They were presented to her in years gone by members of our family on her birthdays and various festivals. Her ladyship never wears anything made by people outside. Yet to hoard these would be a downright pity. Indeed, she hasn't worn them even once. It was yesterday that she told me to get out 2 costumes and hand them to you to take along with you, either to give as presents or to be worn by someone in your home. But don't make fun of us. In the box you'll find the flower fruits, for which you asked. This bundle contains the medicines to which you alluded the other day. There are plum blossom spotted tongue pills and purple gold ingot pills. Also vivifying blood vessels pills, as well as driving offspring and preserving life pills. Each kind being rolled up in a sheet bearing the prescription. And the whole lot of them are packed up in here. While these 2 are purses for you to wear in the way of ornaments." So saying, she forthwith loosened the cord, and, producing 2 ingots representing pencils, and with ruai on them, implying "your wishes will surely be fulfilled," she drew near and showed them to her. "Take the purses," she pursued, smiling. "But do leave these behind and give them to me." Goody Lu was so overjoyed that she had, from an early period, come out afresh with several thousands of invocations of Buddha's names. When she therefore heard Yuan Yong's suggestion, "Miss," she quickly rejoined, "You're at perfect liberty to keep them." Yuan Yang perceived that her words were believed by her. So smiling, she once more dropped the ingots into the purse. "I was only joking with you for fun," she observed. "I've got a good many like these. Keep them therefore and give them, at the close of the year, to your young children." Speaking the while, she espied a young maid walk in with a cup from the Shenkil, and hand it to old Goody Liu. "This," she said, "our master secundus Mr. Pao gives you. Whence could I begin enumerating the things I got?" Goody Liu exclaimed, "In what previous existence did I accomplish anything so meritorious as to bring today this heap of blessings upon me?" With these words, she eagerly took possession of the cup. She eagerly took possession of the cup. "The clothes I gave you the other day when I asked you to have a bath, were my own, Yuan Yong resumed, and if you don't think them too mean, I've got a few more, which I would also like to let you have. Goody Liu thanked her with vehemence. So Yuan Yang, in point of fact, produced several more articles of clothing, and these she packed up for her. Goody Liu thereupon expressed a desire to also go into the garden and take leave of Baoyu and the young ladies, Madame Wang and the other inmates, and to thank them for all they did for her, but Yuan Yang raised objections. You can dispense with going, she remarked. They don't see anyone just now, but I'll deliver the message for you by and by. When you've got any leisure, do come again. Go to the second gate. She went on to direct an old matron, and call 2 servant lads to come here, and help this old dame to take her things away. After the matron had signified her obedience, Yuan Yang returned with Goody Liu to Lady Feng's quarters, on the off part of the mansion, and, taking the presents as far as the side gate, she bade the servant lads carry them out. She herself then saw Goody Liu into her curricle and start on her journey homewards. But without commenting further on this topic, let us revert to Bao-Chiau and the other girls. After breakfast, they recrossed into their grandmother's rooms and made inquiries about her health. On their way back to the garden, they reached a point where they had to take different roads. Bao-Chiau then called out to Daiyu. Pian she observed, come with me. I've got a question to ask you. Daiyu wended her steps therefore with Bao-Chiau into the Heng Wu court. As soon as they entered the house, Bao-Chiau threw herself into a seat. Kneel down, she smiled. I want to examine you about something. Daiyu could not fathom her object, and consequently laughed. Look here, she cried. This Chit Pao has gone clean off her senses. What do you want to examine me about? Bao-Chiau gave a sardonic smile. My dear precious girl, my dear maiden, she exclaimed. What utter trash fills your mouth? Just speak the honest and candid truth and finish. Daiyu could so little guess her meaning that her sole resource was to smile. Inwardly, however, she could not help beginning to experience certain misgivings. What did I say? She remarked. You're bent upon picking out my faults. Speak out and let me hear what it's all about. Do you still pretend to be a fool? Bao-Chiau laughed. When we played yesterday that game of wine forfeits, what did you say? I really couldn't make out any head or tail. Daiyu, after a moment's reflection, remembered eventually that she had the previous day been guilty of a slip of the tongue and come out with a couple of passages from the Peony Pavilion and the record of the West Side House, and, of a sudden, her face got scarlet with blushes. Drawing near Bao-Chiau, she threw her arms round her. My dear cousin. She smiled. I really wasn't conscious of what I was saying. It just blurted out of my mouth. But now that you've called me to task, I won't say such things again. I've no idea of what you were driving at, Bao-Chiau laughingly rejoined. What I heard you recite sounds so thoroughly unfamiliar to me, that I beg you to enlighten me. Dear cousin, pleaded Daiyu, don't tell anyone else. I won't, in the future, breathe such things again. Bao-Chiau noticed how from shame the blood rushed to her face, and how vehement she was in her entreaties, and she felt both to press her with questions. So pulling her into a seat to make her have a cup of tea, she said to her in a gentle tone, Whom do you take me for? I too am wayward. From my youth up, yea, ever since I was 7 or 8, I've been enough trouble to people. Our family was also what one would term literary. My grandfather's extreme delight was to be ever with a book in his hand. At one time, we numbered many members, and sisters and brothers all lived together. But we had a distaste for wholesome books. Among my brothers, some were partial to verses. Others had a weakness for blank poetical compositions. And there were none of such works as the Western Side House and the Guitar, even up to the 101 books of the Yuan authors, which they hadn't managed to get. These books they stealthily read behind our backs. But we, on our part, devoured them on the sly, without their knowing it. Subsequently, our father came to get wind of it. And some of us he beat, while others he scolded, burning some of the books and throwing away others. It is therefore as well that we girls shouldn't know anything of letters. Men who study books and don't understand the right principle can't, moreover, reach the standard of those who don't go in for books. So how much more such as ourselves? Even versifying, writing, and the like pursuits aren't in the line of such as you and me. Indeed, neither are they within the portion of men. Men who go in for study and fathom the right principles should cooperate in the government of the empire and should rule the nation. This would be a nobler purpose. But one doesn't nowadays hear of the very existence of such persons. Hence, the study of books makes them worse than they ever were before. But it isn't the books that ruin them. The misfortune is that they make improper use of books. That is why study doesn't come up to plowing and sowing and trading, as these pursuits exercise no serious pernicious influences. As far, however, as you and I go, we should devote our minds simply to matters connected with needlework and spinning. For we will then be fulfilling our legitimate duties. Yet it so happens that we too know a few characters. But, as we can read, it behoves us to choose no other than wholesome works, for these will do us no harm. What are most to be shirked are those low books, as, when once they pervert the disposition, there remains no remedy whatever. While she indulged in this long rigmarole, Daiyu lowered her head and sipped her tea. And though she secretly shared the same views on the subject, all the answer she gave her in assent was limited to one single word, yes. But at an unexpected moment, Su-Yun appeared in the room. "Our Lady Lin," she said, "requests the presence of both of you young ladies to consult with you in an important matter. Miss Secunda, Miss Tertia, Miss Corda, Miss Shi and Mr. Pao, our Master Secundus are there waiting for you." "What's up again?" Bao-Chiau inquired. "You and I will know what it is when we get there," Daiyu explained. So saying, she came with Bao-Chiau into the Daoxiang village. Here they in fact discovered everyone assembled. As soon as Li Wan caught sight of the two cousins, she smiled. "The society has barely been started," she observed, "and here's one who wants to give us the slip. That girl Corda wishes to apply for a whole year's leave. It's that single remark of our worthy seniors yesterday that is at the bottom of it." Daiyu laughed. "For, by bidding her execute some painting or other of the garden, she has put her in such high feather that she applies for leave. Don't be so hard upon our dear ancestor," Bao-Chiau rejoined, a smile playing on her lips. "It's entirely due to that illusion of grandmother Liu's." Daiyu speedily took up the thread of the conversation. "Quite so," she smiled. "It's all through that remark of hers. But of what branch of the family is she a grandmother? We should merely address her as the female locust." "That's all." As she spoke, one and all were highly amused. When any mortal language finds its way into that girl Feng's mouth, Bao-Chiau laughed. "She knows how to turn it to the best account. What a fortunate thing it is that vixen Feng has no idea of letters and can't boast of much culture. Her forte is simply such vulgar things as suffice to raise a laugh. Worse than her is that Pian with that coarse tongue. She has recourse to the devices of the Shun Chu. By selecting, from the vulgar expressions used in low slang, the most noteworthy points, she eliminates what's commonplace, and makes, with the addition of a little elegance and finish, her style so much like that of the text that each sentence has a peculiar character of its own. The three words representing female locust bring out clearly the various circumstances connected with yesterday. The wonder is that she has been so quick in devising them." After lending an ear to her arguments, they all laughed. "Those explanations of yours," they cried, "show well enough that you are not below those two. Pray, let's consult as to how many days leave to grant her," Li Wan proposed. "I gave her a month, but she thinks it too little. What do you say about it?" "Properly speaking," Daiyu put in, 1 year isn't much. The laying out of this garden occupied a whole year. And to paint a picture of it now will certainly need 2 years' time. She have to rub the ink, to moisten the pencils, to stretch the paper, to mix the pigments. When she had reached this point, even Daiyu could not restrain herself from laughing. "If she goes on so leisurely to work," she exclaimed, "won't she require 2 years' time?" Those who caught this insinuation clapped their hands and indulged in incessant merriment. "Her innuendos are full of zest," Bao-Chiau ventured laughingly. "But what takes the cake is that last remark about leisurely going to work, for if she weren't to paint at all, how could she ever finish her task? Hence those jokes cracked yesterday were sufficient, of course, to evoke laughter, but, on second thought, they're devoid of any fun. Just you carefully ponder over Peen Error's words. Albeit they don't amount to much, you'll nevertheless find when you come to reflect on them, that there's plenty of gusto about them. I've really had such a laugh over them that I can scarcely move. It's the way that cousin Bao-Chiau puffs her up, Hsiao observed, that makes her so much the more arrogant that she turns me also into a laughingstock now. Daiyu hastily smiled and pulled her towards her. Let me ask you, she said. Are you only going to paint the garden, or will you insert us in it as well? My original idea was to have simply painted the garden, Hsiao explained. But our worthy senior told me again yesterday that a mere picture of the grounds would resemble the plan of a house, and recommended that I should introduce some inmates too, so as to make it look like what a painting should. I've neither the knack for the fine work necessary for towers and terraces, nor have I the skill to draw representations of human beings. But as I couldn't very well raise any objections, I find myself at present on the horns of a dilemma about it. Human beings are an easy matter, Daiyu said. What beats you are insects. Here you are again with your trash. Li Wan exclaimed. Will there be any need to also introduce insects in it? As far, however, as birds go, it may probably be advisable to introduce one or two kinds. If any other insects are not put in the picture, Daiyu smiled. It won't matter. But without yesterday's female locust in it, it will fall short of the original? This retort evoked further general amusement. While Daiyu laughed, she beat her chest with both hands. Begin painting at once, she cried. I've even got the title already. The name I've chosen is Picture of a Locust Brought In to Have a Good Feed. At these words, they laughed so much the more heartily that at a time they bent forward, and at another they leant back. But a sound of coo-tung then fell on their ears, and unable to make out what could have dropped, they anxiously and precipitately looked about. It was, they found, Hsiao, who had been reclining on the back of the chair. The chair had, from the very outset, not been put in a sure place, and while indulging in hearty merriment, she threw her whole weight on the back. She did not, besides, notice that the dovetails on each side had come out, so with a tilt towards the east, she as well as the chair toppled over in a heap. Luckily, the wooden partition wall was close enough to arrest her fall, and she did not sprawl on the ground. The sight of her created more amusement than ever among all her relatives. So much so that they could scarcely regain their equilibrium. It was only after Baoyu had rushed up to her and given her a hand and raised her to her feet again that they at last managed to gradually stop laughing. Baoyu then winked at Daiyu. Daiyu grasped his meaning, and, forthwith withdrawing into the inner room, she lifted the cover of the mirror and looked at her face. She found the hair about her temples slightly disheveled, so promptly opening Li Wan's toilet case and extracting a narrow brush, she stood in front of the mirror and smoothed it down with a few touches. Afterwards, laying the brush in its place, she stepped into the outer suite. Is this, she said, pointing at Li Wan, doing what you're told and showing us how to do needlework and teaching us manners? Why, instead of that, you press us to come here and have a good romp and a hearty laugh? Just you listen to her perverse talk, Li Wan laughed. She takes the lead and kicks up a rumpus and incites people to laugh, and then she throws the blame upon me. In real truth, she's a despicable thing. What I wish is that you should soon get some dreadful mother-in-law, and several crotchety and abominable older and younger sisters-in-law, and we'll see then whether you'll still be as perverse or not. Daiyu at once became quite scarlet in the face, and pulling Bao-Chiau. Let us, she added, give her a whole year's leave. I've got an impartial remark to make. Listen to me, all of you. Bao-Chiau chimed in. Albeit the girl may have some idea about painting, all she can manage are just a few outline sketches. So that unless, now that she has to accomplish the picture of this garden, she can lay claim to some ingenuity, will she ever be able to succeed in effecting a painting? This garden resembles a regular picture. The rockeries and trees, towers and pavilions, halls and houses are, as far as distances and density go, neither too numerous, nor too few. Such as it is fitly laid out. But were you to put it on paper in strict compliance with the original, why, it will surely not elicit admiration. In a thing like this, it's necessary to pay due care to the various positions and distances on paper, whether they should be large or whether small, and to discriminate between main and secondary, adding what is needful to add, concealing and reducing what should be concealed and reduced, and exposing to view what should remain visible. As soon as a rough copy is executed, it should again be considered in all its details, for then alone will it assume the semblance of a picture. In the second place, all these towers, terraces, and structures must be distinctly delineated. For with just a trifle of inattention, the railings will slant, the pillars will be topsy-turvy, doors and windows will recline in a horizontal position, steps will separate, leaving clefts between them, and even tables will be crowded into the walls, and flower pots piled on portieres. And won't it, instead of turning out into a picture, be a mere caricature? Thirdly, proper care must also be devoted, in the insertion of human beings, to density and height, to the creases of clothing, to droops and sashes, to fingers, hands, and feet, as these are most important details. For if even one stroke be not thoroughly executed, then, if the hands be not swollen, the feet will be made to look as if they were lame. The coloring of faces and the drawing of the hair are minor points, but in my own estimation, they really involve intense difficulty. Now a year's leave is on one hand too excessive, and a month's is on the other too little. So just give her half a year's leave. Depute. Besides, Cousin Pao do lend her a hand in her task. Not that Cousin Pao knows how to give any hints about painting. That in itself would be more of a drawback. But in order that, in the event of there being anything that she doesn't comprehend, in the event of there being anything that she doesn't comprehend, or of anything perplexing her as to how best to insert it, Cousin Pao may take the picture outside and make the necessary inquiries of those gentlemen who excel in painting. Matters will thus be facilitated for her. At this suggestion, Baoyu was the first to feel quite enchanted. This proposal is first-rate, he exclaimed. The towers and terraces minutely executed by Chan Tzu Liang are so perfect, and the beauties painted by Sheng Jishing so extremely fine that I'll go at once and ask them of them. I've always said that you fuss for nothing. Baoyu interposed. I merely passed a cursory remark, and there you want to go immediately and ask for things. Do wait until we arrive at some decision in our deliberations, and then you can go. But let's consider now what would be best to use to paint the picture on. I've got in my quarters, Baoyu answered, some snow-white wavy paper, which is both large in size and proof against ink as well. Baoyu gave a sarcastic smile. I do maintain, she cried, that you are a perfectly useless creature. That snow-white wavy paper is good for pictures consisting of characters and for outline drawings. Or else, those who have the knack of making landscapes use it for depicting scenery of the southern Sumatra, as it resists ink and is strong enough to bear coarse painting. But were you to employ this sort of paper to make a picture of this garden on, it will neither stand the colors, nor will it be easy to dry the painting by the fire. So not only won't it be suitable, but it will be a pity too to waste the paper. I'll tell you a way how to get out of this. When this garden was first laid out, some detailed plan was used, which although executed by a mere house decorator, was perfect with regard to sites and bearings. You'd better therefore ask for it of your worthy mother, and apply as well to Lady Feng for a piece of thick glazed lustring of the size of that paper, and hand them to the gentlemen outside, and request them to prepare a rough copy for you, with any alterations or additions as might be necessary to make so as to accord with the style of these grounds. All that will remain to be done will be to introduce a few human beings. No more. Then when you have to match the azure and green pigments as well as the ground gold and ground silver, you can get those people again to do so for you. But you'll also have to bring an extra portable stove, so as to have it handy for melting the glue and for washing your pencils, after you've taken the glue off. You further require a large table, painted white and covered with a cloth. That lot of small dishes you have aren't sufficient. Your pencils too are not enough. It will be well consequently for you to purchase a new set of each. Do I own such a lot of painting materials? Shichun exclaimed. Why, I simply use any pencil that first comes under my hand to paint with, that's all. And as for pigments, I've only got 4 kinds: ochre stone, Quang flower paint, rattan yellow, and rouge. Besides these, all I have amount to a couple of pencils for applying colors. No more. Why didn't you say so earlier? Bao-Chiau remarked. I've still got some of these things remaining. But you don't need them, so were I to give you any, they'd lie uselessly about. I'll put them away for you now for a time, and, when you want them, I'll let you have some. You should, however, keep them for the exclusive purpose of painting fans. For were you to paint such big things with them, it would be a pity. I'll draw out a list for you today to enable you to go and apply to our worthy senior for the items. As it isn't likely that you people can possibly know all that's required, I'll dictate them and Cousin Pao can write them down. Baoyu had already got a pencil and ink slab ready for, fearing lest he might not remember clearly the various necessaries, he had made up his mind to write a memorandum of them. So the moment he heard Bao-Chiau's suggestion, he cheerfully took up his pencil and listened quietly. 4 pencils of the largest size. Bao-Chiau commenced. 4 of the third size. 4 of the second size. 4 pencils for applying colors on big ground, 4 on medium ground. 4 for small ground. 10 claws of large southern crabs. 10 claws of small crabs. 10 pencils for painting side hair and eyebrows. 20 for laying heavy colors. 20 for light colors. 10 for painting faces. 20 willow twigs. 4 ounces of arrowhead pearls. 4 ounces of southern ochre. 4 ounces of stone yellow. 4 ounces of dark green. 4 ounces of malachite. 4 ounces of tube yellow. 8 ounces of Quang flower. 4 boxes of lead powder. 10 sheets of rouge. 200 sheets of thin red gold leaves. 200 sheets of lead. 4 ounces of smooth glue from the 2 Quang. And 4 ounces of pure alum. The glue and alum for sizing the lustring are not included, so don't bother yourselves about them, but just take the lustring and give it to them outside to size it with alum for you. You and I can scour and clarify all these pigments and thus amuse ourselves, and prepare them for use as well. I feel sure you'll have an ample supply to last you a whole lifetime. But you must also get ready 4 sieves of fine lustring, a pair of coarse ones, 4 brush pencils, 4 bowls, some large, some small, 20 large, coarse saucers, 10 5-inch plates, 23-inch coarse, white plates, 2 stoves, 4 large and small earthenware pans, 2 new porcelain jars, 4 new water buckets, 4 1-foot-long bags made of white cloth, 2 caddies of light charcoal, 1 or 2 caddies of willow wood charcoal, a wooden box with 3 drawers, a yard of thick gauze, 2 ounces of fresh ginger, half a caddy of soy. An iron kettle and an iron shovel, hastily chimed in Daiyu with a smile full of irony. To do what with them? Bao-Chiau inquired. You ask for fresh ginger, soy, and all these condiments, so I indent for an iron kettle for you to cook the paints and eat them. Daiyu answered, to the intense merriment of one and all, who gave way to laughter. What do you, Pian know about these things? Bao-Chiau laughed. I am not certain in my mind that you won't put those coarse-colored plates straightway on the fire. But unless you take the precaution beforehand of rubbing the bottom with ginger juice, mixed with soy, and of warming them dry, they're bound to crack the moment they experience the least heat. It's really so, they exclaimed with one voice, after this explanation. Daiyu perused the list for a while. She then smiled and gave Tianxun a tug. Just see, she whispered. We want to paint a picture, and she goes on indenting for a number of water jars and boxes. But I presume she's got so muddled that she inserts a list of articles needed for her trousseau. Tianxun, at her remark, laughed with such heartiness that it was all she could do to check herself. Cousin Pao, she observed, don't you wring her mouth? Just ask her what disparaging things she said about you. Why need I ask? Bao-Chiau smiled. Is it likely, pray, that you can get ivory out of a cur's mouth? Speaking the while, she drew near, and, seizing Daiyu, she pressed her down on the stove couch with the intention of pinching her face. Daiyu smilingly hastened to implore for grace. My dear cousin, she cried, spare me. Pian is young in years. All she knows is to talk at random. She has no idea of what's proper and what's improper. But you are my elder cousin, so teach me how to behave.
If you, cousin, don't let me off, to whom can I go and address my entreaties? Little did, however, all who heard her apprehend that there lurked some hidden purpose in her insinuations. She's right there, they consequently pleaded smilingly.
So much is she to be pitied that even we have been mollified. Do spare her and finish.
Bao-Chiau had, at first, meant to play with her, but when she unawares heard her drag in again the advice she had tendered her the other day, with regard to the reckless perusal of unwholesome books, she at once felt as if she could not have any farther fuss with her, and she let her rise to her feet.
It's you,
after all, elder cousin, Daiyu laughed.
Had it been I wouldn't have let anyone off. Bao-Chiau smiled and pointed at her.
It is no wonder, she said, that our dear ancestor dotes on you, and that everyone loves you. Even I have today felt my heart warm towards you.
But come here and let me put your hair up for you.
Daiyu then, in very deed, swung herself round and crossed over to her.
Bao-Chiau arranged her coiffure with her hands.
Baoyu, who stood by and looked on, thought the style in which her hair was being made up better than it was before.
But of a sudden, he felt sorry at what had happened, as he fancied that she should not have let her brush her side hair, but left it alone for the time being and asked him to do it for her.
While, however, he gave way to these erratic thoughts, he heard Bao-Chiau speak. We've done with what there was to write, she said, so you'd better tomorrow go and tell grandmother about the things. If there be any at home, well and good.
But if not, get some money to buy them with.
I'll then help you both in your preparations. Baoyu vehemently put the list away. After which, they all joined in a further chat on irrelevant matters.
And their evening meal over, they once more repaired into old Lady Chia's apartments to wish her good night.
Their grandmother had, indeed, had nothing serious the matter with her. Her ailment had amounted mainly to fatigue, to which a slight chill had been superadded, so that having kept in the warm room for the day and taken a dose or two of medicine, she entirely got over the effects, and felt, in the evening, quite like own self again.
But reader, the occurrences of the next day are yet a mystery to you. But the next chapter will divulge them.
Thanks for watching. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more excellent content.